Hello and welcome to another episode of Gumbo Live. Here's your host, BJ from Board Game Gumbo.
Hey, Board Gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back in the Gumbo Pot. It's another episode of Gumbo Live, episode number 138. Gumbo Live is the number one Facebook Live talk show in League City, Texas, dedicated to board gaming. That's right, League City, Texas. Shout out to our friends Patrick Newman and Cindy Newman. They were listening to some Bullfog Brothers while Taco Tuesdaying today. I approve that. Bullfog Brothers, we can't beat that. So our special guest tonight, I am super excited about tonight's show. Tory Brown, the designer of Votes for Women, a game we really enjoyed here in the Gumbo, and Kevin Bertram, the publisher of Votes for Women, who Philip Millman says is a really nice guy. I mean, is there anything more we need to know than that? We've got Tory Brown and Kevin Bertram coming in. A couple of quick show notes. Hit us up on social media tonight at Board Game Gumbo on Twitter or Facebook, and we'll be checking in with our questions in the chat today. But enough blather. Let's get right to our special guest. First up, Tory Brown. Welcome in, Tory.
Hello. Thank you, BJ. It's so nice to be here.
All the way from Woodbine, Maryland. No, that's not right. DC.
No,
that's right.
Washington, DC. That's the
Washington,
one.
DC. That's right. Checking in. That was, by the way, that was some shtick we were doing there. I saw Patrick checking in. Happy Taco Tuesday. That's right. Well, welcome in.
Holy of days.
And we've got Kevin from Fort Circle. Welcome in.
How's it going?
It's going fantastic. Thank you guys for checking in on Gumbo Live. I love talking games with people like Tory and Kevin. But even though I know who you guys are, maybe some of the people in the chat might not. So, Tory, why don't you go first? Give us the elevator pitch. Who is Tory Brown?
Not know who I am. I am Tory Brown. I am the designer of Votes for Women, a card-driven game about the American women's suffrage movement and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. This is my very first game, and I am incredibly excited to be here to talk with you about it. It's published by Fort Circle Games, and you'll hear all about that in a second. When I'm not designing my very first and super fun and pretty game about the suffrage movement, I live in Washington, D.C. I work in politics, which may not be surprising if you see the theme of the game. I root for the Washington Nationals, which used to be a lot more fun. I've got two cats, a husband, and I'm about to turn 40, and it's very exciting.
Hey, Patrick's got a question for you already. Do you ever hang out in Old Town Alexandria? I don't think he's referring to Ellick, Louisiana. I think he's talking about someplace else.
No, Old Town Alexandria, Virginia is a beautiful spot right on the waterfront. Amazing Main Street, lovely restaurants, great shopping. I get down there as often as I can, which isn't as often as I should. Old
Town Alexandria. We're going to have to check that out. Kevin, have you been?
I have. Although you usually need a passport to cross the Potomac River to go into Virginia. Sometimes it's worth it. So
passport and make sure all your shots are up in order,
absolutely.
Right? Malaria, everything else, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
It's really lovely.
My name is Kevin Bertram. I am the owner of Fort Circle Games. Fort Circle is actually named for the string of defensive forts that protected our nation's capital during the Civil War. And I'm the designer of Shores of Tripoli, and I'm an old friend of Tory's, and so I'm so glad we got to work together on Votes for Women. And I'm not turning 40.
Okay. Yeah, me neither.
Tread that ground long ago.
Yeah, seen that. We saw that milestone already, Kevin. So we actually have something in common. I was just thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys are the historians, not me. DC is similar to the area I'm from because it used to be a swamp, right? If I remember right, in the early history of the capital?
No, that is lies. It is specious lies that Washington used to be a swamp. Politically, sure, whatever. But there's marshland, actually.
Marshland,
which is ecologically distinct from swamplands.
Well, we're proud
people
of
want
our
to believe
swamp.
it, right?
We're proud of our swamp down here,
Swamps are incredibly important natural ecosystems. There's nothing to be ashamed of except the Washington, D.C. part.
We're trying to rebuild ours because they're great for hurricane, protection and great for the coastlands. So we're trying to get ours big. So Patrick brought up that because he said there used to be a really cool pub called Ireland's Own that was fun to hang out in. Anybody familiar? Maybe.
Nope.
Maybe.
Sorry, Patrick.
Maybe.
Did he run him out of business? What happened to Ireland's Own?
Patrick drank all the Abita root beer and they went out of business. That's probably what happened. So
it's impressive. Put that on a resume.
Patrick Newman loves the historical games. I've got a couple back there that he's big fans of by our friend Jason Dinger. I don't know if you guys know Jason, but he designed Crescent City Cargo and he designed Captains of the Gulf, 2 games about our area down here in Louisiana. So
I'm in a Facebook group with him, so that's how I know him.
okay, yeah. It's got a new one coming out next year or so called The Acadians. Very proud of that one. Can't wait to see that one. So Christopher Brown checking in. Thank you for checking in. Chris, if you have any questions for Tory or Kevin, hit us up.
That's my dad.
Oh, is it really? Well,
Hi, Dad.
send him the link if he wants to join the show. We've got room if he's got questions. Is that really your dad? Wow, that's great.
He's the best.
Thank you, Chris.
He's helping me set up a lecture for a university down in Wilmington, North Carolina, where he lives. He's been a super champion of the game, and it's really nice to see him here. Thank you, Dad.
All right. So we've got a couple other people coming in. We've got the Gumbo Overlord, who you have not met yet. Verla is here. Verla, welcome in.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Verla.
Verla,
Nice
we're
to meet
checking
y'all.
in. And Steve also, who you got to talk to in the pre-show. Steve was one of the ones, Kevin, that got to play Votes for Women. So Steve and his friend Adam are going to have some questions as we get closer to that part on Votes for Women. But, this show is all about talking about games, board games, games that we've played recently. And one of the ones I'd like to hear from is Tory Brown. You talked about playing a game called Holotype recently. So tell us a little bit about Holotype, if you don't mind.
Sure. Holotype is a worker placement game. It's pretty light strategy. It is about finding dinosaurs and marine reptiles. We should be clear that they're not all dinosaurs. Essentially, it's a publish or perish game where you are a paleontologist, you have a research assistant and a grad student, and you are visiting dig sites, you are going to the library, you are looking at other specimens in the museum, and you are trying to achieve personal as well as global objectives to publish certain kinds of research. So, it is, academically nerdy in nature on about dinosaurs and reptiles, and it was a lot of fun. I would say that light strategy was really nice, and you're visiting Hell's Creek Formation and all these different dig sites around the country. It was a lot of fun, and I think you play up to 5 or 6 player, and as you increase player, you flip over the worker placement boards, and so it scales pretty well.
Tory, I think you're getting in Patrick's wallet already. He says he's sold.
Well, have you heard of a game called Votes for Women? If you're going to buy just one game,
Get that game first, Patrick. Then talk about Holotype.
Combine, save on shipping.
So Jared and I got to play Holotype, Holotype Mesozoic North America. We played it live on our Twitch channel. We actually enjoyed it. It was, like you said, it was on the lighter end of the scale, which does bother me. Hey, look, I've got thousands of Ticket to Ride games and all those. I actually like games. Steve and Verla and I hang out in a group called Chuck's Gateway and Filler Games Group. So this is not a show that disparages light games at all. We love them. In fact, I think you mentioned that when you talked to Dan Thoreau, Tory, that's one of the things that attracts you. 2 things I think you said. The rules are easy and you can beat your husband every single time. So I've got a wife who beats me at most of the games that we play, so I know exactly what your husband's going through. But where do you, if you were trying to kind of pitch this game to somebody that hasn't played it before, and you're talking about the mechanics, what's the thing that's going to stand out for them?
I think the idea that you can play these different characters, right? A professor, full-blown professor gets lots of access to these dig sites. A grad student, a research assistant, fewer and fewer. The way that it threads the, sort of seemingly incredibly accurate dinosaur and reptile types with these different formations. So you're getting a sense of where these digs are around the country. And then the need to manage your resources in a really sort of easy to understand kind of way. And I think that there were like instructions on the cards in a way that I really appreciated, that it sort of takes from the rule book and puts them into the gameplay on the main board as well as the worker board in front of you. So it was, like I said, super easy to play, interesting, and dinosaurs, flashing marine reptiles.
I did like that part that you talk about, though. I like any game that has workers that are a little bit different from each other. Tricarion is one of my favorite games, and learning to deal with all the different types of ways that the workers will play. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed. Obviously, the holotype is not as thinky or as deep as any of those games. So this is a way you can play that kind of game without breaking your brain, as Tricarion usually does for me.
Yep.
Is that that's the part that you like? One of those things?
Yep. That it is sort of easy to jump into, work your way through. And they've got an expansion. I think I understand they're trying to kickstart, or like they're getting close on a European sort of version, right? Where the decks are for European dig sites. And I would love to see them get to China, because there's just some super fascinating research happening.
Patrick has a question. To compete for grant money, I don't remember there being any kind of direct interaction between the players for that, which would be pretty thematic, of course, right?
Super thematic.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. There was a competition for the types of research that you're going to do, so that you could either upgrade your cards or fulfill the cards. I'm not sure what the mechanic was, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
Verla, what do you think?
It's kind of reminding me of, I think it's called Encyclopedia, that recently came out. It was kickstarted, where you are going around to different continents, not archaeological digs, but you are getting cards, animal cards, researching so that you can publish your research. But this sounds lighter, and I think I would like that better. Encyclopedia was kind of midweight, but this just sounds like it might flow better.
Might have to bring it to ChuckCon this summer, Steve. What do you think?
Interesting. I'm a college professor myself, so long as this does not come with a faculty senate or committee service expansion, I'm all about it.
I had to keep playing the publish or perish card over and over and over again to try. No, I don't remember that. I don't think that's in the game, but I really did enjoy it. And it's got dice. Anything that there it wasn't an automatic element for. I'm trying to remember what the dice do. Is that the resources that you're going to use to turn in the cards, or is that the direction you're going with the cards? Do you remember, Tori?
I think it was the kinds of fossils, right? There were like 3 tiers of fossils that you could accumulate, and you needed like 2 greens and a purple, and so those were those cubes that you would then sort of amass to sort of push around so you could get to publish.
Yep, we needed it. Sobo, Patrick Newman says. So we have a convention called Southern Board Game Fest over here in Acadiana, Tori, and we, it's one of those kind of regional cons. We get, about 300 people, but we do try to focus on having a nice curated library with lots of different things going on. So Patrick's one of our mainstays. He goes to Sobo. So yes, I will bring it if you want to play it. Might even just donate it to the library. Let everybody get a chance to play it.
No comments on the spelling of Sobo, BJ?
I should have said something. That's right. Yeah. No, that is actually how we spell it. We spell it SOBO. Just to make it quick. But you're right. If I had my choice,
you want the EAUX and all that.
It would definitely have the EAUX.
Themed to death.
Anytime I say go to Sobo, you know how I'm going to spell it.
That's right. There you go.
But no, Sobo, we just say SOBO.
Okay.
Man, it's a lot shorter than SEAUX, BEAUX. So. I don't know if you know, Tori, we're obsessed with that down here in South Louisiana. So
I have heard.
I am so glad you mentioned Holotype, because I got to play it a couple of times with Jared. Probably need to get it back on the table, because I'm having a little trouble remembering some of the mechanics. But I remember enjoying it, and I remember there being that it was one of those games where it was really competitive all the way down to the end, and I like those kind of games. So I think we had lost Kevin, but I think he is still gone. Hopefully we can get Kevin back in there, because we were going to talk about Kevin Con next, but he's not in there.
Back.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that. Let's see.
We'll Fort Circle back.
Oh,
let's see. It says his
I'm sorry, we didn't talk about this in advance, but prepare for pain.
Oh yeah.
Groaners deserve groans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says Kevin, you have to try again, because it says something about his device is not connected. I'm not sure. We may have lost Kevin. So
okay,
I'm not sure. Yeah. So, talking about Kevin, how did you guys meet? You and Kevin Bertram?
Sure. So in the year 2000, and the way back whens, before all of the children were people, I was a freshman at George Mason University and on the debate team there. And Kevin was helping with the debate team, having been a former debater himself. And so I was I'm telling you now, Kevin, I'm telling the how we met story.
Oh, good.
So I am this incredibly naive 17.
Pay no attention. It's an idiot driving past our house.
Oh,
Okay, gotcha.
is that New York City? Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I was an incredibly naive 17-year-old. Kevin, a wizened elder in the debate community, and we. He helped out with the debate team and we stayed in contact. I worked for Kevin for like a couple of years in between campaigns, which was a lot of fun. And again, been friends, go to baseball games, soccer games, basketball, all sorts of stuff together. I was super happy when he started Fort Circle and started working on Shores of Tripoli. It was something that obviously was super passionate about, and it was incredible to watch the launch and how successful Shores of Tripoli was, how much people loved it. And I think I got the bug a little bit from that.
So Kevin, that's a good segue. Tell us about Fort Circle Games. So, you have a catalog of 2 now, so
we've doubled our output.
That's right.
So when I designed Shores of Tripoli, I started looking at publishers, and it was pretty clear that most publishers don't put the same amount of love into a game that a designer does. And so I was like, well, I might as well publish it myself, so I have the resources to support a game like I think it should be. And so that's sort of why I decided to publish Shores of Tripoli instead of have someone else publish it. And so the pandemic certainly threw us off our production schedule a little bit, as Tory, I'm sure, can tell you. But now we've got a number of games lined up that we're pretty excited about. I think the next 2 games that we'll be publishing, one is called First Monday in October, which is on the history of the Supreme Court. And then one is called the Halls of Montezuma. It's a sibling game to the Shores of Tripoli, and I have a co-designer for that, Gilberto Lopez. And I think I'm answering the right question, but to be honest, I was out of this conversation for about 10 minutes there, so I hope I'm answering what I'm supposed to be answering right now. So
you actually brought up something. So Steve and Verla, if you ever buy a Fort Circle game, and you should, one of the things you're going to be impressed when you take, well, number one, it's got, by the way, you have great boxes. The boxes are absolutely nice, thick, chunky, great boxes. But solid. But when you open it up, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a rule book, but you're also going to see just all this flavor stuff. You know how Philip wrote that great thing in the back of the Watergate book where he goes through all of the history of the Watergate stuff? You get the same thing here in the Shores of Tripoli. You get this just background information about it. It's got a letter. I don't remember because it's been a couple of years since I did the review. Kevin, you have to help me. There's a letter that stares at you right when you get there. Maybe from James Madison. I can't remember now.
It's from Jefferson to the Basha of Tripoli. And it's this, it's that flowery early 1800s language that is really like super threatening, but you read it and it does, it's like, oh, it's this flowery, my friend, please help watch over our ships, when actually it's like, we're coming to get you. And so it's a great letter. And that was a test my wife and I were talking about how can we really engage students or people interested in history. And so that was a test. And when that test went so successfully, that's when Tory went full riot on documents to go and vote for women. So
Verla, because you've played New York 1901 with me, that I just love when you open up a box and it's got just awesome little components. There's just something about it. I was playing a game. It was a Gentis, the Deluxe Fight Edition, and I had an unknown Dice Tower reviewer walk by, and he saw us playing, and he's like, "Oh, is that the new edition?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's nothing different from the first one. I just like the first one." I was like, "Yeah, well, we could have played with just a poster board and markers." And it's true. You could play Votes for Women just with a poster board and markers, but how much fun is that? We're board gamers, right? We like the bling.
Actually,
Kevin brings
we
the
did
bling
in the
these
beginning.
games. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. It's Jay Bell always tries to get me to play prototypes, and I do. Jay, I love playing your prototypes, but man, all I see is white pieces of paper and handwritten numbers. I'm more of a visual person. I just don't see the game when it's just little components like that. I really do struggle with that. So
I've been doing some demos, which has been so fun. There's a Game Castle franchise in College Park near here. I was able to do a demo in Labyrinth, which is the best little game store in the country here in Washington, D.C. And I bring the prototype with me. I bring there's both the prototype and the playtest kit for folks to see sort of like the difference, to see how different it feels to play from just basic discs and sort of nonsense standard pieces to what comes in the final Votes for Women box, and it is night and day.
I'm telling you, Kevin brings the bling. But I saw Steve had a question about in our little show notes about something that I didn't even know it existed, and then I kind of did a little bit of research. Kevin, tell us about Circle DC, or as Steve calls it, Kevin Con.
So, I shouldn't be a publisher. I should be a wedding planner, because that's truly my calling in life. And so, and then I also like hosting tournaments and events. And in fact, Tory and I ran some excellent college debates in the past, debate tournaments. So I wanted to do something to kind of pull together all of the designers and not only the commercial designers like Tory and I, but kind of the professional war gamers who work for the government and, folks from the media, and then just people who like to play games, all into, because there's such a concentration of folks here in DC. So we put together a little event. It was just over 100 people, but the designers there was pretty impressive. That picture you're showing there, that's Elizabeth Hargrave and Jason Perez that Tory's teaching right there. David Thompson, Jason Matthews, Volker Runke. It was almost an
Steve,
all-star
it's like
list.
a who's who list here, man.
Yeah.
When your picture is taken by Jason Matthews, designer of Twilight Struggle, you've got a nice picture going there.
Yep.
So it was a great event. We held it in a Mason Lodge that is extremely old and it was a cool place to have it, although I think it might have been a little tight for what our needs. It would have been great if it was only 60 people. So it was a little loud, but we had got to see some great prototypes. We got to play Undaunted Battle of Britain the first time that David Thompson was showing that off. He and Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire have a game called Night Witches, which as a publisher I'm very interested in. And then,
the Night Witches, that's fantastic.
Yes, and then I saw a ton of games. Dan Bullock has this outstanding game about being corrupt military contractors, which resonates in this area. And I played a game that I'd been pitched on. So it won some design jam where you had to put a game together in 7 hours. And the between Japan and Russia after the War of 1905. And I'm like, yawn, what a boring subject. But they convinced me to play it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing game. So even though mostly I was administering the event, I get to play all these great games. I got to talk to all these great designers. National Public Radio sent a reporter over. They mostly were there for Tory, not surprisingly. And then our local glossy magazine, Washingtonian, was there, and that was super fun. And so, trying to mainstream our silly little hobby. And so
Tory, is it true? Should Kevin quit his day job and become just a full-time convention planner? Was it a good time?
As the person who's been published by Fort Circle, no. I would like him to continue publishing games.
Yeah, that's true.
But in his free time, he is a wonderful host. I think Kevin's main talent, his raison d'etre in life, is as a host, that he is magnanimous, he's welcoming, he is warm, and wants people to have a very good time. And I think he met all of that with Circle DC. was a little loud. The acoustics were a little funky in the space, and like there might have been some human sacrifice that had happened there in a fun kind of way.
Just good.
But-
Like you do.
But to bring that many amazing designers, folks flew in, right? DC has a great concentration of, Jason Matthews, Liz Hargrave live here. Like there's going to be, strength from the 202. But folks came in from all over and, all these different games happening at once. And to just walk around and look at the different boards, the different components, there's a real nice range. And I think it speaks to both the work that war game hobbyists are doing and designers to support different titles, to expand the hobby and the community. There were other girls there, which was nice and doesn't always happen. And so, I think that is intentional to try to create more space for different kinds of voices, different themes, attract different people. And I think that Fort Circle and Circle DC are a part of that important work.
That is some great stuff. We've got our little con coming up in Alabama this summer.
Yeah, we do.
We've got Sobo, but I'm hearing some good ideas that maybe we can steal Steve.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the wheels are turning.
Yep.
I would actually also recommend. I would recommend having something that draws on the local area. So we had Mitch Reed, who is a war gamer at the Pentagon, take a 15-person tour of the Pentagon. Right, and that's something that I did. Is something we do here. We couldn't do it this year because it's closed, but next year the
Paul Belmont House.
Yeah, which was Tori can give you the history more. It's an important location for women's suffrage movement. Unfortunately, it was closed this year, as was the Folger Shakespeare Library, which was a block from where we were, who we're doing some work for. So, tie into your local things that make your location cool and kind of show it off. Play games 90% of the time and see some cool stuff 10% of the time.
Make inside kids go outside.
Yep. Well, we're joking about it, but it's an absolute truth. Patrick will tell you that our last Southern Board Game Fest, which was our third or fourth one, we decided to time it to the same weekend as the Festival Creole de Cadien de Creole, a food and music festival that is right next. I'm telling you, it's 100 yards from your board game table. So at Gen Con, you can leave Gen Con and walk across the street to a food truck and get a burger. Or
Tori, you're salivating just a little bit there. I saw your face.
You can finish your votes for women and go get fried alligator or jambalaya or boudin balls or whatever you want to eat right there while you're listening to Steve Riley and the Mamu Playboys playing in the background. And
is it the same weekend as Gen Con? Are you going to do that to me?
No, I'm not. It's
okay.
It's the week after Essen. So when everybody gets back from Essen and they want to just do something nice and local. And as Patrick said, if you're a foodie, it's a foodie nirvana for Louisiana food right there. So we decided that when they moved weekends to the fall, we're like, what are we going to do? You know what? We're just going to postpone our con for 6 more months because the thrill of not having to, because the previous years we had to DoorDash and waiter food in. Are you eating M&Ms? You know what I mean? No, we want people to get away from the tables, take a break, listen to some Cajun music, eat some good food, and I think that balance, right? When Verla and I went to BGG Con, I am as I go to more and more conventions over the last 10 years, I still play hard and I still play long, but you got to have that mental break sometimes just to get away.
And that opportunity to I know so many people now from Twitter, and to actually play with them is one thing, but to be able to sit down, to walk across the street, to sit down and have some food, to just sort of oh, you're a real person with all other things happening. I think it's really nice.
Yep. Just to chat. You can still schedule games like at BGG Con. I've got John Company II. We're going to be playing that, but at the same time, I've also got a trip to a local lake. And we're going to do some boating, just to get away from everything. So I really like it. I think it's fantastic. Great idea.
How long did Kevin Con last? How many days was it?
How many
3
months?
days.
3 days. Okay.
Yep.
This was the first inaugural?
Yes. And I think we might stretch it to 4 next year, but with that first day being kind of an academic conference, because we have a lot of people who are game designers who are also in the academic world. So a number of professors, we actually had folks down from the MIT lab. I think probably maybe 10%, Tory, 10 or 12 people were there who were professors at this lab. And so kind of formalize some of the discussions that are occurring with games. And so to kind of give a little more legitimacy to our hobby. And so I think we'll do 4 days next year is the plan.
Just bring in the whole Central Michigan team, right?
Yep.
Cool.
We got to put that on our calendar. So get the word out on social media, Kevin, so we can see. You never know. You might see some of us over there. It'd be a great one to go to.
Some of the crew.
You never know. All right. I think it's
bring
time
that alligator with you because we don't have it.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can bring something. We'll see. We will see. BJ from Board Game Gumbo, I've got my guests here, Tory Brown and Kevin Bertram. Tory, the designer of Votes for Women. Kevin from Fort Circle Games. And it's time to talk about the big game, Votes for Women. Tory, it's your first game. What was it like seeing that game at Labyrinth? I saw that picture right there in the middle of Labyrinth. What was that like? And tell us about Votes for Women.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think I'm still in a bit of a state of disbelief. It is hard to believe that this game that was in my heart and in my head for years is actually on other people's tables and shelves. It has been, I didn't know what to expect from the release, and it has exceeded those wild non-expectations. So Votes for Women is a game about the American women's suffrage movement from 1848 to 1920 and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. In 2020, America celebrated the centennial of that amazing moment. And it seemed, and I read an article the year before about all of the planning. There was a commission. There was all of this stuff that was going to happen. And it seemed like a really great time to tell a story about this amazing movement to an audience that maybe wouldn't have heard anything in history class and wouldn't necessarily crack a nonfiction tome. So to reach a new audience with this great story, and and to coincide with the August 2020 moment of the centennial. Then the pandemic happened and everything sort of got turned upside down, which is great. I mean, no, the pandemic was terrible. I still own it. But the time that we were able to spend on development, on research, on working it out, on having a bajillion people play test it and send us their thoughts and reactions and feedback, being able to incorporate that, being able to put 13 different historical documents together to include into the box has been, I think it really shows the care and the love that went into this game. It's primarily an area control game, card driven, and I'd say pretty, light strategy in a very nice way. It's certainly the heaviest game that a lot of my friends have ever played, but I make them play it because it's my game. The game is 1 to 4 player, 2-sided game. I think it plays best 1 versus 1, suffrage versus opposition. And, they each have their own deck, and you drive through history as you're pulling these cards, and you're encountering famous and not so famous people. You're encountering historical moments like the Civil War and then the 15th Amendment. You're encountering divisions in the suffrage movement. You're really feeling the story and feeling the push and pull that the suffrage movement went through as they were campaigning across the country and trying to get eventually the 19th Amendment passed through Congress. So there are 2 victory conditions for the game. Suffrage needs to put 6 columns into the congressional track, and then build power across 48 states, since that's all the states that there were. No offense, Alaska and Hawaii, I think you're great. This didn't exist in 1920 when the amendment was ratified. And suffrage needs 36 states, 3/4 of the states to ratify. That's what Article 5 says of the Constitution. So that's what we put into the rule book. And that means that
the conditions built in right there, right? Right out of the Constitution.
James Madison doing me a solid, helping me with the rule book.
If you look all the way in the back of the rule book, he's listed as a co-designer. James Madison.
His how to play videos are the best.
Yeah, Madison.
They are.
Hey, does anybody have a quill? We need to take the score down. We got to fill out the score pad.
Just have a parchment pad. Yeah. Opposition only needs 13 states. It's a lot easier to not do anything in America than to do things. I don't know if anybody had noticed that. But the asymmetrical play I find super fascinating. The decks are full of artwork and news clippings and primary source documents. The map is really pretty. I don't know. I really like it. I would love this game even if I didn't make it. So that's Votes for Women.
Yeah, I was actually trying to look for the cards. So Kevin, what attracted you to this game? You remember how I told you that I'm not very good with prototypes. So I'm sure when you first saw it, it didn't have the Fort Circle treatment yet, right?
Well,
what attracted you to the game?
So normally, a designer works on a game and then sends it to that's some awesome background.
Nice one, Patrick. And his wife Dolly supplied the game night snacks. That's right.
Is actually Tori and I talked about the design before she started working on a design. And so I don't know when that was, Tori, maybe 2018. I mean, I know you had started 2019. Yeah. So Tori had started playing more games and getting interested, and she's deep into politics, understands it. She really enjoyed Watergate, really enjoyed 1960. And so, we had a conversation, and, I think she had the idea, and I started thinking about the idea a little bit too, because of 2020 was coming up. It's definitely, I'm not trying to take any of her glory, but this was a discussion we had. So there wasn't a prototype that just came to me. We talked about it, and then she went to go to work for a prototype.
But she told Dan, you described it, and you went, I'm in, right away.
Yeah,
what was that spark? What was that spark right away?
Well, so I like working with Tori. I mean, that's just that simple. And so she could have proposed most anything, and I would have been excited about it. But then when, we have I think that, I don't mean to get too heavy about this, but I think that, historical, particularly wargaming, has always been sort of a male-dominated space. And the opportunity to maybe expand that a little bit also really, I thought, was kind of a good thing to do, a good move. And it's also, I love 1960. I love political games anyways. And I knew that with Tori's depth in the history and her attention to detail, and just, having worked with her in debate and then in the business world, I knew it was going to be a great project. So I was like, yeah, we got to do this. So
yeah, and Tori, I've heard the interviews. You don't shy away from the fact that this is a war/conflict/ type of game, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, 70 years, all of these states, all of these people, all of this back and forth. I mean, Inez Milholland died campaigning for suffrage, right? Body counts is apparently what we need for a war game, right? I do think, though, that nonviolent conflict, especially for political rights, it's important to have that kind of, that we understand that war isn't the only way things are settled, right? That there are processes, even as difficult and as daunting as something like a constitutional amendment, that the conflict here is worth understanding and is good gameplay, because it was not just the suffragists were yeah, we want to vote, and everybody was we don't think so, and they're no, we really do, and they're okay, right? It was resistance, it was mockery, it was winning and losing and winning again, right? And so you feel that as you're putting down the cubes on the map, this kind of was not unidirectional. It was not just happy-go-lucky momentum. It was fierce opposition at almost every turn, and that the tension of that comes through in the game is, I think, a testament to a lot of research to sort of get that history involved. And then I think, a lot of feedback from our play testers. Jason Matthews, who was the designer of 1960 Making of a President, similar game uses the Electoral College as a sort of, the mechanical structure behind the game. We use just a sort of simple 3/4 to 1/4 count. constitutional amendment ratification, the input, the feedback that I got working with Kevin, working with folks to make the gameplay as smooth as it is was just a really gratifying process to have this, like, I've got this idea, and then all these people help me shine it into what is Votes for Women now.
Well, Steve and I love talking about history. I know Verla likes history, but we brought in a ringer. We've got Adam Mills, a friend of ours from the Chuck's group. And I want to bring Adam in because he's got some good questions for you, Tori. Are you ready for some, we do a lot of shtick on the show, Steve. But now we're going to bring an actual expert in. Welcome in, Adam.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert, though.
You're a teacher, though, and I am not. I do have a history degree, but I am not a teacher. And so, Adam, I appreciate you coming in. You've got some good questions for Tori and Kevin?
Yeah. So I am a special education high school history teacher who focuses on trying to bring games into the classroom as much as possible, and also share my love of gaming and convince other educators to use games in the classroom. I've been served on panels at PAX Unplugged and PAX East, New York Comic Con, discussing why games should be in the classroom. And one of the things that I like to focus on in my first question for you is through Votes for Women, and I guess, games in general, do you find it to be more impactful for a game to be designed through the lens of trying to teach the specific historical content, or to use historical content in games as a vehicle for more the supportive historical thinking and analysis skills?
I think that the way gameplay works, I think at one point really committed to, Arizona didn't become a state until 18 whatever, right? And Wyoming was the first state to have women vote in elections, if you don't count New Jersey, which we don't. And so I was really needed to adhere to chronology, and I just had to shake that loose. And so I think what we gave up in historical accuracy became an opportunity to think creatively and analyze history. So in the game, in the deck, you could play the 15th Amendment or even Reconstruction before the Civil War. And, maybe that's kind of weird, but maybe the 15th Amendment sparks the Civil War, right? Where enfranchising people from, as a constitutional amendment creates this strife. It can help us think about cause and effect, and that, we understand things happened in a certain order, but what if they didn't? So I think that I had to give up on just, teach the content in order to get to focus on the underlying forces of social change, of movement politics, of what it takes in our country to make things better for a lot of people. And I, essentially sacrifice what would have been a sort of, this is, and then this happened, and this happened, and then this happened, for what could happen. Because if we can think about what could have happened then, I hope students and players will think about what could happen next for us.
I think that's an amazing way to approach it. I find myself often, even before I began using games in the classroom, doing a lot of kind of what if, historical thought experiment type things with my students. And I think that, like you so eloquently put it, that does a great job of pushing students to not only think of, well, why wasn't it this way? And what are we going to do if it happens again? Or we are, faced with a similar type situation. Also, I love the inclusion of the primary sources. That's a great throw-in for a history teacher to be able to. And I'm also always trying to think of how to sell this to admin, and you can be like, no, it's not just a game. It's also, look, there's history. It's right there.
Yeah, there's how many pieces of I don't want to call it fluff. How many pieces of flavor are in there? It's like 13 or 15, right?
13 historical reproductions / tchotchkes, as I've also heard it referred to. And that was a fun project. Kevin said, like, this is important to Fort Circle. Give me 2 or 3 documents.
2 or 3.
And I think I gave 15 and we negotiated down to 13. But
in my defense, in my defense, I was on your side on the number. It was my wife who was like, oh, this is too much and it's going to overwhelm people. And she now admits, one of the very few times she does, that she was wrong and we were right. I fully backed all of this being in
Kevin,
there.
there is going to be somebody out there that opens this box and goes, wait, it's one of those murder mystery games that we have to go through all the clues.
It was Susan B. Anthony in the
whole time.
I think I know the answer to this one already. I think I know the story, how it came out.
And there's also one piece in there that actually was not from Tory, but that was from me, which is a letter from the Standard. So the president of the Standard Guano Company was extremely upset that Emmeline Pankhurst was being allowed into the country. And so he wrote a nasty gram to President Wilson. And the reason I wanted that in the game is because we will be publishing a game probably in 2024 on the guano trade called Guano. And I like the fact that almost every game we have that we're planning has a tie to another game. So like The Shores of Tripoli has Thomas Jefferson in it, who is also in the treason trial of Aaron Burr. And you have Frederick Douglass, who is in Votes for Women, is also in the Halls of Montezuma. So, right, like how there's these, even though these games are wildly different on wildly different topics, there's these interconnections. And so this is the Guano letter is our connection to the Guano game to Votes for Women.
Adam, it's the FCU, also. Adam. It's the Fort Circle universe, right? I mean, it's the FCU. You got to go with that, Kevin. It's the FCU, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to end up taking up the back row of many classrooms.
Yeah. So this is one you could see using in a classroom, since 2 or 4 people could play, but Tory, to me, Adam could have people watching the game and enjoying it just as much. I like these kind of games because when you watch other people play games like this, you actually have just as much fun as the people playing, because it's sort of like a little movie you're watching, right?
It is. And you'd be like, hey, like, let me see that card. And you're looking over these documents. I've also played it 2-sided, where you could have a group of 4 or 5, right? Like having a group discussion about, do we play the event on the card? Do we campaign? Do we lobby? Do we organize? And so you're really sort of like weighing, like like activists have to weigh. We have limited resources. We have a lot of decisions. What's our strategic advantage? There's math in the game, right? As you're considering what are average rolls versus what might be dictated on the card. And so I think that there's a lot of different options for, how you would focus. There's a school or a university in Indiana that like a class on progressive era history. And that professor used the game, I think, and again, divided the class into half, and they sort of worked on it together, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, as you were talking, that's kind of exactly how I envisioned it. So I mean, again, kudos. My only other question was, and you kind of spoke to it there in terms of there might be some math skills involved, definitely some group dynamic things happening if it's played in that way. But I guess I was wondering what kinds of skills, both in terms of game skills, game knowledge skills, and in terms of historical knowledge and thinking, do you think students would need to already possess in order to be successful and find enjoyment with this game? And then how might it lead to generalization of skills for success in other content areas or other games?
I do think that you benefit as a player by having a basic understanding of the story. I think that I would, if I was going to teach with Votes for Women, that there would be an initial narrative that you grant, because I think, there are these strategic decisions, these calculations about not just your choices about what to do with these cards, but there are two victory conditions: the congressional track and the map, the ratification map. And if you don't build enough power in Congress, you never get to the map. But if you build power in Congress too quickly, you get to the map and it really ties a lot of opposition's strength. So there's this like pivotal moment where sort of a window, and like the window in history, where it became suddenly feasible to lobby Congress and to earn votes on the underlying legislation for the amendment. So the idea of timing, I think, would be like a helpful discussion about like the historical movement and then in gameplay. And I think that would be a skill or something that you would want to talk to students about. I do think that the understanding social forces, racism is a component of this game, because racism was a component of suffrage history, because racism is a component of American history. Xenophobia as well. And as immigrants are moving into the country, both suffragists and the opposition were using people's fear of immigrants to say, well, give us the vote or don't give anybody the vote. We don't want, right. And so understanding, that power in this country has always sought to preserve itself and has used some really unsavory means to do so, I think is also then, if you intro it, play the game and say, okay, what happened when that xenophobia card or white supremacy in the suffrage movement came in and came about, I think, helps, I hope, understand again that like, protesters in 2020 didn't invent this thing called white supremacy and start complaining about it, right? It's been wedded through everything in this country, and that is why we need to be able to talk about it. And unless we can reckon with our past, we can never improve our future. Right? Again, this sort of forward-looking, what do we do? Who do we include? Because the suffrage movement very famously, or maybe not famously enough, did not want to include a lot of Black women in their struggle. Clubs were separate, right? There was this segregation even in the movement. And what could have been different if the suffragists had rejected that kind of segregation and white supremacy? What if, the movement itself in 1920 said, okay, we've done this amazing thing in the Constitution. What are we going to do in the South about Jim Crow laws and about voter suppression? And instead they just sort of like gave up or focused on the ERA. And so being able to talk openly about that, which I know not everybody can, not everybody lives in a state where we can be honest. And that's just how that is. But I think that there's, equipping students with facts, and helping them think about the present is really powerful.
Is that one? I have it on the screen up here. Is that one of the reasons, if I remember right, why you have both purple and gold colors for one side? In other words, the two forms of power that it was. Well, maybe tell the audience about that. Why you chose purple and gold? In other words, two distinct powers, whereas the other side only has one color cube to worry about.
Sure. The suffrage movement wasn't a monolith. There were disagreements over, issues of race. And the first big split comes in after the Civil War and the 15th Amendment, where the Constitution enshrines the right to vote for Black men. And people like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony are incensed. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton gets like real graphic about like, how dare you let these uneducated Black men vote where I, this educated, wealthy white woman, am not allowed to do this, right? Susan B. Anthony takes a little bit more of like a what I would call like a palatable stance and says universal suffrage or nothing, right? Everyone in or none of us. But there are these underlying notions of the racism and that continues throughout, right? That these like beautiful, nice, happy white women can't vote, while look at all these like, drunks and criminals and Black people are allowed to vote. It's, it's quite a thing. So the purple and the yellow, it indicates that division in the movement where they actually split into two different organizations and sort of went side by side until the late 1800s into the 1920s. But then in the 1910s, they split again, and there's more militant tactics, protesting in front of the White House, which then ends up with the arrests and force feedings and torture in prisons, which, like state violence, yay, that doesn't still happen at all. And the purple and yellow were the colors of the suffrage movement. Purple representing loyalty, white representing purity, and yellow representing the light that shines the way. So
Gold.
Using gold. So using
purple and gold.
Using the colors of the suffrage movement, because that's historically accurate, to represent these splits is, I think, visually really evocative. And then in gameplay, opposition can exploit these divisions and can, if you aren't spreading out your resources equitably, then you can really get hamstrung in some places where you weren't prepared.
It's such a shock sometimes when someone plays that card and you've really got all of one color, it can really hurt. So I love that. I love that idea. I think it was great. Yeah. Besides the fact that you chose purple and gold.
Purple and gold.
That's fantastic.
Purple and gold.
Any other questions for the group on Votes for Women?
You were talking about this earlier on, both Kevin and Tory, about this being a kind of a war game. And to me, as we were playing it and doing a demo, it felt almost more like a siege game. Like there was a long, slow build of momentum towards something. And in the early stages, opposition is trying to throw up roadblocks and survive and camp out behind. But you're right, that the timing of that, the accumulating and spreading across the board, the momentum starts to shift. And then you have to pivot to saying, when can we get the amendment through? And then take it to ratification. Have we laid the groundwork across the states for ratification before we do? It really did feel like it was a long, slow building attack against the opposition. So while it was war, it felt to me like it was more of a castle siege, almost to some extent.
One of the local professional war gamers here in DC referred to it as an insurgency game. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The opposition starts very strong, but they're kind of hollow. And this insurgency, the suffrage movement, has to take some time to build up power. But then, in our game, hopefully, if you're the suffrage player, overcomes that entrenched power.
Right. The only other question I would have is related in a way to what Adam was talking about in terms of students' preparedness for this, or maybe even other gamers' preparedness for this. When you've got a game like this where there clearly seems to be a right side of history and a wrong side of history, how do you get people who are maybe not history buffs to feel comfortable playing a game where they're representing something that might be just repugnant to them and say, well, it's just a game? We tried it with that to just say that when we were doing the review, that it was going to have to immediately switch sides. You had to immediately play the other side just because you needed to see both. But I could see where some folks might only want to play against the Oppobot and never want to have to be anti-suffrage.
I learned the most from building the opposition deck. There isn't a lot of story or narrative around opposition to suffrage, right? We tell the story from one side, and there's all this abstraction, and they were just up against forces and up against, right, patriarchy, and that was it. And so building out the suffrage deck was fascinating. It was hard, but it was important. There are all these senators who are just saying these really noxious things, and I get to put all of them down at the bottom in the flavor text. I think, we face similar struggles today, and we also face similar opposition to rights-based movements. And if we are ever going to overcome, and we are going to start expanding freedoms again, rather than just lose them, we need to understand our opposition. We can't just pretend that they are cartoon characters twiddling their mustaches, right? They cannot be caricatures. They are people and industries and financial and personal incentives that we must overcome in order to sort of do this whole more perfect union business. And so I think playing Votes for Women gives you a very soft entry into understanding the vast array of forces that were responsible for trying to stop the suffrage movement, including many people are very surprised that women opposed suffrage. It just never occurs to people that maybe some women, and it's not just like didn't want to vote, actively organized to stop all women from voting. And so that understanding is power. That understanding, yes, Rob, is, and so I say all this in play it, understand it. And if you lose, like losing as opposition is kind of a night. Like if you hate losing, try as opposition.
Sure.
Also, or play the Oppo bot. It's fine.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
That's good points there. So Rob said understanding both sides of any signing issue is key to understanding. That was a great idea to have a side swap to see the views through a larger lens for sure. You make it tough because in the game of Risk that most of my generation grew up on, we knew we weren't always going to be able to control America or control Australia, the turtle up strategy Australia. You had to play countries or areas that maybe not something that you would identify with, right? Maybe that weren't always on the right side of history, but they were so abstracted in Risk. This is not this, Steve. I think you'd agree with me. This doesn't feel like an abstract game at all. And Tori, kudos to you for doing that. It really felt like you're sweeping through history as you're going through the game. Now, I want to play the game more, or even watch people playing it, because, like you said, sometimes you do get caught up on just check marks and purple and gold cubes instead of that awesome flavor text you have. So it'd be fun to actually watch Steve and Verla play this and go at each other at ChuckCon, and then I can just kind of watch the movie.
You also get to know people in an odd kind of way. It was, where am I going to put these cubes? Ohio, like I hate that state, or people tell you about themselves while they're playing. I'm from Michigan, so I got to make sure Michigan does my way. It's fascinating. I love it. I
didn't understand because I saw New York there, and I went right north, and I kept looking for Montreal, and I couldn't find it.
It's there.
So I thought maybe there's something wrong with the map. So
this anti-North bias of yours, BJ, you're showing your true colors, and they are not purple and gold. They are not purple and gold.
It's my ignorance. You get above the Potomac Canal, and I don't know what's going on up there. So I don't get up there enough. So yeah, fantastic. Patrick says in the framework of a game, if he has to play the bad side, he's going to just play to win. Because essentially we are playing games. So we have to remember that, right, Tori?
That was my assumption. Kevin and I met as, in the debate community where you argue every issue from both sides and all of the sides. And that arguing that global warming is good for blah, 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 whatever the oil industry said is reason. It's just part of the game that you play. I've been surprised at how emotional people react to playing opposition. Maybe like you said, in a lot of, games where you're playing World War II or the Confederacy, it's abstract. You are moving tanks or drawing battle lines, and it's not about what's underneath all of that conflict. Votes for Women is it is about what's underneath. It's about the morality and our sense of justice. And I guess it's nice that people don't want to play opposition, but they should.
They should play both sides.
Or they can play the Oppo bot. It's fine, whatever.
Watergate is one of our favorite games. And look, you got to, you don't want to, but once you're playing, Nixon, it's not like at that point you feel like it. You just want to win, like in chess, right? You're just, you're playing chess. But at the same time.
Nixon's the good guy in that game.
Yeah. That's
the baby that.
We'll have to duke that one out, Kevin. But that is the good thing is while you're playing the game, you're playing to win, as Patrick said. But you have the game, and you look at the game, and you study the game, and you look at the cards, and you can't help but pick up all the history behind it. So kudos, Tori. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, this is a board game show, and you know what that means. Adam, are you hanging around for the board game show for the game part? Or you got to go.
I got to go. It's getting a little late here in New York, and I still have to teach tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of which, before Adam goes, I just dropped the link to Millsocracy, his site in there, and you'll know that you'll appreciate it that the tagline is teaching through geekery since 2005.
Love it.
So,
Well, Adam, thanks. We played games together. It's funny, but we've never actually met. So it's nice to have you on the show here. And thank you for the very thoughtful question.
Thank you. And I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. Thanks.
Oh, the Gumbo bump. Did you hear that, Kevin?
here it is.
Ching.
All right. All right. Thanks, Adam. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
See you, Adam.
All right. Patrick Newman checking out too. Thank you for all the great questions, Patrick. And Wayne,
Right,
you
Patrick.
got to check this out. You will never be disappointed by the bling you get in a Fort Circle game. And you get the bonus, fantastic gameplay. So, But Steve, this is a board game show. Tell me and Verla what we're doing tonight.
What are we doing?
Well, tonight we are going to do a history-ish themed version of the Boudin Bowl. We have created, between BJ, Verla, and I, we have created a little draft of games where we created 4 categories that we were picking from. And those 4 categories, we'll take you through them one at a time. But what you're going to listen to is us give a little pitch to you. We'll try to keep it to maybe 20 seconds to really keep it popping along. But we're going to tell you what the category is and why we picked the game we did. And then our esteemed judges, Tory and Kevin, are going to pick winners in the category. Whoever they pick,
and the chat crew can influence them,
the
right?
chat group can influence them. The chat group might not get votes, but they certainly do spread their influence across the map.
That's right.
So what they're going to do is try to pitch you. And if Tory likes one, that'll get a point. If Kevin likes a different one, that'll get a point. But if they both pick the same one, that one person's game will get 3 points. And at the end, we'll add them all up across the categories to see who picked the most history fantastical games.
Wayne says he's in. All right, Wayne.
All right.
And what is Evan is saying? What? Quaxaquella? Every time. It doesn't matter the category. Best 17-player game. It's Quaxaquella.
That's always the answer.
It's a running joke on the show, Tori.
BJ and Verla, do you have our doc open to remind us of which games?
I do.
Cool.
I do.
All right. So
All right,
I'll lead you through the first category here, and then we'll go through them in order that's BJ, Verla, me.
We're playing the Boudin Bowl. It's brought to us by our friends at Game Toppers LLC. Don't forget, make your game nights a showstopper when you play on a Game Topper. Steve, take it away.
All right. Our first category that BJ, Verla, and I were picking from all the games we love, we made the first category Best Map Game. And we let that be defined however you want. It could be the most beautiful map. It could be the most unique map playing game, the one that you love the most, whatever it is. So BJ, kick us off with what was your map pick and sell Tory and Kevin on it.
The Overlord's not going first? Oh, wow. Okay, good.
It was in the order of you picked first. So I was going to go through draft style.
Topher. Shh. Topher, that's not a good choice at all.
Topher, that's the best choice.
So I did pick one, and I picked it near and dear to my heart. It's a game that I got to play in its infancy, but I also got to interview the designer a couple of times, and he told a fantastic story about Captains of the Gulf. It's got a gorgeous map of the Gulf, and he built the game in honor of his grandfather, who actually was out on the water from Morgan City and shrimped and got crabs all of his life. It was a tough life back in the 20s and 30s, wore his grandfather down. But he, Jason almost cried saying, I wish my grandfather had been alive to see what his history passing down to him and the love of the sea and the love of this map. No, Topher, it's not to scale. It's not a perfect map of the Gulf of Mexico, but Harold Lusky's art is fantastic in the game. It's got this evocative cover of the sea, and you really see it. When you're looking at Captains of the Gulf, you're looking at the map, just like you see this beautiful map here with Votes for Women. So I'm hoping to play the sentimental card right on number 1 with Boudin Bowl. But yes,
if you win, Jason gets a point.
It's all about Jason's grandfather, Tori. It's Jason's grandfather in the history.
Okay. BJ's made his pitch. V, what you got?
I have Concordia. Topher called it. And really, this is what Steve wanted, and BJ knows that's what he wanted deep down in his heart as well, because we are all constantly playing this wonderful game that comes with, you can get the expansions, so many maps, trading on the Mediterranean and all these different areas. It's just a classic game. Have you guys played it? If you haven't, you are missing out. It's brilliant. It's so elegant in the gameplay. You've got cards. Everybody has the same set of cards to start with. You just pick a card on your turn, play it, do what it says. Then you can buy more cards. You can, build your little settlement so that you can get resources. And it's just great fun. We've all been playing it on this website that finally crashed, Boudin. So we're trying to get it going on Steam within our little group. And that's how we all bond together. And so, I mean, why would you not pick that, BJ? This is how we bond.
Solid
Our
response.
group.
Solid response. I see your sentimentality, and I raise you in more immediate group friend love here. All right, I see how this is going to go.
I know Topher and Evan are going to vote for it.
Well, they certainly are already out lobbying. Consistent with the theme of the night, they're lobbying for your choices here. My choice was Tickets to Ride, and you notice that I made that plural because every
shenanigans. I'm calling shenanigans. You can't pick maps. It's map.
Best map game. If you're going to put me on the spot, I would probably say I like the Europe map. Or maybe the Nordic countries map might be my favorite. But those maps, if you want to get sentimental about something, those might have been our entry into the field. Maybe that wasn't our entry to the game friends that we have, but those are the early games that might have gotten you hooked. And what got you hooked was traveling across that map that you already know. That's America. That's Europe. That's Scandinavia. And now I'm laying down my trains. For me, that was the idea that when I thought maps, that's the entry to the field for this. So
Wayne throwing the darts, though. Concordia is my top 10, but that map is bleh. Verla.
Pick a different one. There's so many options. There's got to be prettier ones than
we're making it tough for you and Tori. We're making it tough for you and Kevin right off the bat.
All right, Kevin, what do you think?
All right, this is a piece of cake. So, Concordia does not win. I like the game. Everybody I've tried to teach it to hasn't liked it, and I think at least 3 people have slagged the map. So Concordia is a definite no.
You're playing with the wrong people, Kevin.
They're terraforming Mars kind of folks, I guess. So Ticket to Ride is a nice option,
right,
although
Evan.
I don't like Europe's rules. But I have to be honest, Captains of the Gulf, I think that might be my winner. I like that story. My great-great-grandmother was the second oldest survivor on the Titanic, the oldest from third class, and that's why I feel a tie to games about the Titanic. Similarly, this game that Jason made, that's what I'm going to go for.
Okay.
But nice. I think we need to do some fact checking on BJ's story. Like, who knows if this is even true? This whole thing about Jason's grandfather, he could be making it all up.
What is truth?
What is truth?
What is truth?
Spoken like an academic.
I'll send you the link, Verla. I'll send you the link.
So what do you think, Tori?
So I've never played Concordia, and I hear bleh in the chat, and so I take that off my list. I thought when I heard this category, my first thought was Ticket to Ride. It's one of those games that I beat my husband at, and it's really gratifying. I've never played the Scandinavian map, so I don't know. So I think I'm also going to go with Captains of the Gulf. I put a picture of my great-grandmother in the deck in my stupid cat. Sorry. On the Women in World War I card.
Is that a cat on the show, really?
Well, she's down. She's not.
We have a tradition of getting cats on the show. So.
Kevin and the pirate cat over there.
There you go.
My cat only has one eye, so she trumps
interrupt
everybody.
Your story, Tori.
Okay.
So I was able to put a picture of my grandmother in the great grandmother in the deck. It's like the sentimentality is in the art, right? So if we just to decide on what metric we're deciding this, sentimentality and art, that's
totally your call. I get it. I thought I had you with Ticket to Ride. If you are interested in playing a 2-player game, the Nordic countries one is a tight map, and it's really good for 2 players. So beat your husband at that one.
I'm in.
Oh, I like it.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Do you want to shuffle up the order? Or you want to go in the same order and let BJ, beg and plead first, and then Verla and I will actually make cases?
I would love for the Gumbo Overlord to go next.
Okay. Verla's next pick. This next category is best city location game. So the game has to be named for a city, but we're going to sell it to you based on gameplay or if the location made it thematic somehow. So Verla, what was your city game?
So my city game was really hard to decide on, but I went with Tilatum, however you pronounce it. Nobody knows how to pronounce it these days, it seems like. And it's a real city, I think, in Belgium that has a different name now. Yeah, Evan, I could have gone with Castles of Burgundy for a region because that's my number one game. You know it. But yeah, Tilatum has been just a top game for me since it came out last year. What's that?
Hey, so Jared said...
Oh, Evan. But it's another map game. It's a map of Europe, and I don't know, how many hundreds of years it goes back with the different names, but you are dice drafting. It's got really cool mechanics for how you are moving around the board, moving around the map, collecting resources, getting people to put in your houses, and that's what I go with.
Okay. Solid pick. I have yet to play that one, but I'm hoping that's going to be a Chuck Con.
Tilatum, fantastic. And I'm going to bring Tilatum to Chuck Con for us.
Good deal. Okay. Fantastic. So if we're going to rotate like that, then I think it comes to me next.
That is a fantastic second choice.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, okay, so let's hear the first choice. I'm going to go next. My choice would be, and Topher's already nailed it, Bruges. Bruges, if you like a Euro game,
great movie.
Bruges is a very accessible, wonderful multiplayer, multi-use card game. You love Feld, you're going to love Bruges. But what I personally like a lot about it, I'm going to sell you on this, the vibrant Euro color palette, the kaleidoscopic taupe, the volcanic brick and sandstone colors that really make everything the rainbow of Euro goodness.
This is a weird Boudin Bowl we've got going on here.
I'm grasping at straws. I got a 0 here, BJ. But Bruges is a fantastic game centered on the city of Bruges, and it's really accessible. Card play is the thing, and it's a good way to get into something a little bit deeper when you're starting off in that gateway and you want to dig a little bit deeper into something strategic.
Steve, I would have voted for Waterdeep just to be the Cylon because
that's a great city.
Well, Bruges was what I was deciding between that and Tilatum. So you know what? My feelings aren't hurt if you go with Bruges because that's a great pick too.
Magnanimous.
Fantastic game.
But before you pick one of those two, I want to tell you about my friend's grandfather. Sorry. No, I want to tell you about my game. And my game is a game that I enjoyed. And also because, in all honesty, Verla's going to question this, but I am related to the original Postmaster General of Canada, Pedro da Silva, known as La Portuguese. That's what he was known because when he crossed over in the early 1500s, he was Portuguese, and they would nickname you by your name. So in doing that research, I found out he was originally from Lisboa. So every time I see a game that has anything to do with that section of Portugal, I always get excited. And I got the chance to back the Kickstarter of Lisboa from Eagle Griffin Games. And when I opened it up, this is almost as good as a Fort Circle game in terms of production, Steve. I mean, it's almost as good. It's like this close. Lisboa is fantastic produced. It's got amazing art from Ian O'Toole. It's got this vibrant color scheme, but it's both super simple and super complex. There's only really 2 rules. You play a card and you pick a card. But when you play that card, 17 things happen to you. So you got to keep all those in track. It breaks my brain. When I play it, I find it extremely thematic because if you know anything about the history of Lisboa, they had a triple whammy. They had a earthquake and a fire and something else all at the same time. Flood, which all were related, completely leveled the city, but it birthed a beautiful new city that came out and a art style, Manuelista, I think is what it's called. The buildings were built after King Manuel there in a military style because the only people that were left were the military who built the city, rebuilt the city in a military style. So that's Lisboa. It goes back to my my ancestor who struggled, Tory, to come across the ocean and fought the wilderness of Canada. And that's Lisboa.
Not very approachable, though, to newbies.
It's not.
Bruges and Tillotune are far more approachable for beginner gamers.
I'm curious to hear what they say, though, about it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. Pedro goes.
Nobody
Pedro
believes
de
BJ,
Silva.
ever.
Accessibility matters a lot to me, as you might be able to tell from my game, and that these entry games are, that they're fun for everyone as well as sort of new people, right? I think that is huge. I have been to Bruges. It is an amazing city. It is a fantastic movie, and I'm voting for Bruges.
Oh,
okay.
Congrats.
I will cheer for that.
So the right answer, of course, is Great Cities, Washington, D.C. Just because we won't be publishing it until next year is no reason that you shouldn't have picked that.
Had I known, Kevin, had I known.
And then the second pick, which I was hoping someone would pick, was Carcassonne, because
Evan did say that.
Carcassonne, is such a. So my in-laws are now 80, and it's a little harder to play with them now. But like the last 10 years, we've played just the most cutthroat versions of Carcassonne. My wife, my sister-in-law, and my in-laws, and to the level that we just can't play Carcassonne with anybody else because we are just that good and that vicious, and it's anyways. And so if anyone would have said Carcassonne, that would have had my vote. So I guess I'll go for Lisboa.
Evan wins the internet tonight. Evan wins the internet. So Kevin, I had a friend of mine who's a big board gamer, but he told me, y'all are playing Carcassonne tonight? I don't want to play that. I don't like playing those, those friendly games. I'm going, friendly? That is what are they, the old trope? It's a knife fight in a phone booth if you play it with the right people. I mean, it's one of the meanest games alive.
Oh, yeah. And so, getting into someone's farm, stealing their cities, like bitter and vicious. But I didn't play it initially because the first edition rules or first English printing rules that I think it was Rio Grande were a mess, and I didn't want to play it. But then the rest of the family just caught into it so much. I was like, fine, I'll play, because it's weird. I'm the game player and I'm not playing this game that they all love. So that's great. I came in, and yes, Carcassonne is. I mean, it's not a game I would say now, oh, we got to play that, but it's just such a classic. It eclipses even Catan for me. It's or even Ticket to Ride. It's the classic game to play.
So Steve, are you giving Evan a point for Kevin?
I don't know. I would be tempted to do so, but Evan's going to.
Is Kevin picking a city?
Are you?
I said Lisboa.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Okay, got you. Yeah. I didn't want to hear it, but I guess I hear it now.
It's a weak third choice, but.
Okay, BJ extends his lead. Right.
Thank you.
Next game is Best History Themed Game. Now, this has to not be affiliated with either one of the two of you, and history can mean however we define it board game-wise. It doesn't have to be a war game. Because
we'd have been fighting over votes for women or Shores of Tripoli for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Exactly. So if we want to rotate this around, is it my turn to kick off?
It is
Go
yours.
for it, Steve.
Okay. My game, and I'm pretty optimistic about my choice here, is Watergate. Seeing your reactions to Watergate from earlier and knowing that there is a Philip affiliation with the DC area, and knowing that Philip
Watergate with the two DC people, Jack Crew. Come on, man.
My great grandmother was Richard Nixon. What can I tell you?
Watergate, very solid choice, Steve.
But a solid, literally tug of war, back and forth, playing for power and influence, and whether you pick whichever side, it feels a little bit easier to pick there, because it seems like at that point I wouldn't mind playing as Nixon and throwing myself into the villainy role if I wanted to do that, because I could think about that as role playing rather than being on the wrong side of history, perhaps. But Watergate just really screamed thematic history game for me.
Good choice. I threw a curveball in this one for y'all. Number one, it's my favorite city in the whole world, as Steve knows, New York City. And so I picked a game, New York 1901. And I could tell when I wrote it down in the notes that both Verla and Steve rolled their eyes. They're like, New York 1901? How's that a history game?
You're wrong, BJ. You're so wrong.
But that's because I've followed and befriended Chenier LaSalle, the designer. Even before the game came out, I was following the development of, well, not before it came out, before it won the awards, I was following the development of it. Chenier LaSalle, who's the designer, loves history and he loves photographs. So when he was making this game, and I think this is where Tory's going to be thinking about this, because it's similar to what you did with Votes for Women. As he's making the game, he created a Facebook page called Postcards from New York City. And what it is he started collecting postcards of these amazing buildings at the turn of the century. And then he kind of put it out there. People started sending him postcards from all these beautiful buildings, not knowing that this is about a game. This is just one of those Facebook, group type things. If you go through those amazing photographs, you see the history of what I believe is the world's greatest city, Steve, New York City. I'm a big fan. So
that's the thing you've said tonight that you're not wrong about.
I had to pick
Beautiful.
New York 1901 because I think it is secretly a fantastic history game for anybody that plays because they're going to see these buildings and they're going to be interested in it and do like me. They're going to Google it and come up with that beautiful website that Chenier has curated. So,
okay,
New York 1901.
Well, BJ, you're wrong. When I saw that was your answer on the list, I was like,
really?
Oh, BJ, that was really good. Why didn't I think of that one? And you're the one that's gotten me to play it. I owned that game, never played it, ended up trading it out, and then finally played it with you at BGG Con. And I was like, okay, this needs to come back into my collection because I really want to play it again. So yeah, I wish I had picked that and put that on my list, but I put Great Western Trail because you get to be a cowboy, driving cattle across the range. You're
going to sing the Toby Keith song, right?
Should have been a cowboy.
There it is.
Yes. Bring it. It's deck building. Got all these cute cows, and then they're going to make a new version that's New Zealand that has sheep that are so cute. And you're trying to get with the new version, the second edition of Great Western Trail with the cows. You've got these little baby cows. If you get a card early on, and then you can trade them as you get to Kansas City and they grow up, and then it's a teenage cow. It's kind of gangly and awkward. And then it's a big grown-up cow. If you get the highest one, then you get more points for it. It's so much fun. Then you eat it? No, you put it on a train and let somebody else eat it at the other end.
Yeah, then it's history.
That's how it works.
Okay.
So,
GWT. All right, what do you
yeah,
guys
I
think?
mean, it may not have the flavor text and all the, historical, very specific historical pieces like Steve's choice in Watergate, which is a very good choice, and BJ's. But, if you're all about American history and like cowboy, the whole idea of the Midwest cowboy, you can't go wrong with Great Western Trail.
Solid choice, brother.
If this show were in Montana,
and yes,
Verla
putting
would
cowboy
win.
hats on the meeples, super fun, so satisfying. You got to get the second edition. They kind of upgraded the bits and everything. So great.
Kevin, what do you think?
So the right answer would have been Star Wars Rebellion, because that is a game that takes place a long time ago, but
in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes. And that's actually why we had it at our convention. Was the only non-historical game we had there. Well, non-historical, of course, it's really a historical game. Boy. So I actually grew up in Montana, and so you would think I would like Great Western Trail, but actually I don't, and I don't know why. It's some moral failing on my part.
You just seem to be against me this entire game, Kevin.
I know. I've actually
what
been
have I ever
noticing
done
that.
to you, man?
Yes. Well, it's because, I do a good deed, votes for women, so now I'm going to do a bad deed and, always vote against your choices.
Oh, no.
Wow. So Tori's going to be clearly voting for Great Western Trail now.
But she should probably balance me out. So I would say
canceling votes.
Yeah. What I often say, so I run the Watergate tournament at PresCon, and I ran one here for Circle DC. And what I usually say is my only criticism of Watergate is that we didn't publish it. So I'm going to have to go with Watergate.
It does feel like a Fort Circle game. It would have been a great one.
Yeah. I can see that.
It's fantastic. Tori.
I would say Watergate was one of the games I got right before the pandemic and played a lot of it. There was a lot of free time on my hands. And I think that's right. The tug of war, the being a villain, like it's all, it's all right there. I'm not from Montana, but I used to live in Kansas, which was cow country, in Ellsworth, which is, one of those old they have Cowtown days. So I'm very connected with the history of the Old West. I just watched Stagecoach tonight.
Oh
yeah, John Wayne. Like
Sure.
John Ford.
John Ford, yeah.
Ford's, yep.
Yeah.
It just got released on the Criterion Collection, and so the great movie. So and
Panavision.
And cows. I think 1901, getting people to send you postcards sounds like kind of a cop out on research. With Great Western Trail.
Thank you.
Oh, the cows take it.
Nicely done, Verla.
Nicely
done. So what are our
Verla.
scores going into the fourth quarter?
Going into the final round, this now has Verla with 1, me with 2, and BJ with 4. The only one who won a 3-pointer with Captains of the Gulf.
So I think Verla should go first.
Okay.
Give her a chance to pitch it to the crowd and get this thing done.
Sounds good. All right, Verla, the last category that we've got is Best Ancient Civilization kind of themed game. It just has to be at least marginally set in a before the Renaissance time, space, setting, I suppose.
Ooh,
so
Star Wars Rebellion is out, Kevin.
Happened a long
time ago.
So I went with Teotihuacan, the city of gods, where you are trying to build the ancient pyramid of the sun. Have you guys played it?
I own it.
You own it. You own it. Well, there's a start. We're starting off on a somewhat good foot here, Kevin. You own it, but you haven't played it yet. You're missing out. It's got these tactile square blocks that you're building this pyramid with in the middle of the table. It's got this amazing table presence. You have your dice that you're using for your workers. They go around the board. There's like 8, I think, like sections around the board that you can go to gather resources, stone or gold or decorations for the temple of the pyramid as you're building it up. There's some set collection. There's some ancient Mesoamerican masks that you can collect. They are coming out with a new deluxeified version of it on Kickstarter, talking about blinging out your games. I mean, I was really impressed with the game as it was when it came out, 2019-ish? And the upgrades that they're doing on it are just like, oh my goodness, wow. So anyways, talk about ancient civilization. That's one of the few that I've played and really, really liked. So that's my vote.
Okay. All right. To me, my choice for this was Ra, going back to Reiner Knizia and ancient Egypt for this. That's the setting. It may not be super historical, but the setting there calls out to me. And there's so many different versions of this with different art that you're guaranteed to find one that you like the look of, including a new edition from, was it 25th century? BJ, did you get that one?
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Evan and I are doing some Photoshop stuff. Sorry about that.
I see. What you've got with Ra is
I do have the brand new one from 21st century.
What surprised me about it is that it's an auction game, and I don't like auction games. But it's an auction game that is very accessible. You have a couple of different choices of what you can bid, and your bids will eventually come back into rotation. So that when you place the bid, there will be when the bid finishes, those things are going to get redistributed in some ways. So you're then going to be trying to pull out of a bag, Quacksequedlenberg style, although this came first, and you're going to be doing set collection through auctioning. And the fun that is in this little auctiony game while you're rooting for someone to break or bust and chanting Ra, 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 for Ra to arrive. I was just blown away by how accessible and fun this game was. It's like a pumped up set collection sushi go-ish type thing with auction that is in a setting that I love, the ancient Egyptian theme.
It's a good sell. That's a good sell. So I found out that Europeans have about 2%, in some cases, Neanderthal DNA still left around. And so I started thinking about my ancestors and the struggle, they had. No, I can't even sell this one. It's Stone Age, and there's two reasons I picked it. Number one, it was really one of the first ancient civilization games that I kind of played and had a good time as a board game, because we used to play Age of Mythology and Age of Empires a lot. Stone Age is nothing like that. It's a worker placement game. It's got a great dice mechanic. The dice cup smells terribly when you first play it. It's got all those things that when I was first getting into the game, I know.
Oh, this is a winner.
It's true. But the second reason I picked it is simply because when we play it, I love singing the B-52's Love Shack. I mean, we're going to sing Love Shack the entire time. If you play Stone Age with me, we're always going to be singing Love Shack. So, ancient history.
And roof. Rusted.
Ancient history. I'm 2% Neanderthal, as my wife would tell you anytime we go to the bowling alley. And number 3, it's got the Love Shack. So that's my story for Stone Age.
The selling point on this, you're gonna love this game. It smells noxious. Is like
ever the sideline.
Total reverse psychology. BJ's
Hey, Tory likes accessible games, so I threw New York 1901. Didn't land, but Stone Age very accessible. It's a game that everybody's got to play at some time.
True.
So.
I still haven't played it, but you didn't really sell me tonight, BJ. A stinky, smelly game?
Yep.
Wait, you're going to make people sing? What are bad singers?
I liked your choice of Teotihuacan too, Verla. I that is a thinky game that hurts my head, but in a good way.
All right, so Tori, what you got?
So I will immediately reject the Stinky Cup game. Don't know what that's about.
I don't know if that came out the way you meant it to come out. But okay, go ahead. We'll take it.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I am intrigued by group chanting, but ultimately decide against bringing. There was some terrible Marvel show about the raising of Egyptian.
Oh, maybe.
Good one.
Ethan Hawke makes me think that's a bad idea. So I am going to go with Teotihuacan. I'm going to Mexico City for my 40th birthday in 2 weeks. So I've been reading up on it. I've been doing awesome research. And so easy, done. It sounds a lot of fun. It looks beautiful. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it's definitely on my list.
If we ever get together, happy to teach it to you.
That'd be very nice.
Sounds good.
Right.
Over some alligator bites, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
So no pressure, Kevin, but this is the most important decision you make all day. No pressure.
So Raw is a game that we would never publish because it's not really historical at all, right? The theme is just pasted on there. It's that could be anything.
It really could.
But
it could be Barnum and Bailey Circus. It could be.
Yes, but my father-in-law, it's the only game that he dominates the family at. His ability with that game. I know, it's crazy, right? That old fart dominates at Raw. Usually there's 5 of us that play games, and if it's Carcassonne, my wife and I win 2/3 of the games, and then maybe the rest. But so we're kind of the better game players. But with Raw, I would say that old coot wins 80% of the time. He just dominates Raw, and so I gotta say hats off to the old man, and hats off to Raw, because there's a game that I suck at and my father-in-law's great at. So
I approve of that.
There's some value in that. So so I'm gonna go with Raw.
All right, give us some scores, Steve.
The stinky game was. So sounds like a Blue Panther game.
Hey, Tom Roller checking in. All right, thank you for coming by. Just missed the game.
This ended up being pretty close at the end, and I was almost able to take advantage of the BJ loses ties, but BJ, I think, has pulled it out 4-3-2.
Oh, Verla had a good comeback there in the end.
Teotihuacan. I thought when you said Ra is themeless and pasted on it, I agree, but I thought Teotihuacan was going to take it. You would have taken the tie. You'd have had it.
Right.
Well, and so in fairness, I not only own it, I've looked at it, and it looks like a pretty good game. And I think, but it's hard for me to without actually having played it or watched anybody play it, really make a full commitment to it. And so I feel really bad about this, and I see the scowl you're giving me. So if I need to send you some promo cards for Votes for Women or anything I need to do to make the way between us better, I'm happy to do so.
You should fear the Gumbo
PJ gets
Overlord.
bragging rights, but Verla wins the game.
Yes, she did.
All right. Makes sense.
That is the Boudin Bowl presented by our friends at Game Toppers LLC. Don't forget, make your game nights a showstopper when you play on a Game Topper. All right, board gamers, that's it for another episode of Gumbo Live. I really want to thank Tory and Kevin for sticking around for a little longer Boudin Bowl. We just kept going with it. It was fantastic. How can they reach both of you? Tory, starting with you first, if they have any questions after the show.
Sure. I am on Twitter at Torylyn, TORYLYNN. There's an Instagram page, Votes for Women Game, and I just started a TikTok, Votes for Women Game. If you want, you can try to find me there.
Nice. Kevin?
Cat butt.
Yes. Sorry about that.
At Fort Circle.
Yes, thank you. On Twitter, I'm at Fort Circle. And
I got to solo this, Kevin. I just have to solo this. Go ahead.
And my email is kevin@fortcircle.com. Our website is fortcircle.com. So a lot of Fort Circle action going on here. So
some kind of circle.
I don't. This is a family show. You can't say that, Kevin. That's great, though. Yeah. So at Fort Circle, and Tory, yours is
at Torylyn.
At Torylyn. That's right. Fantastic. That was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for coming in.
Yes.
Make sure to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/BoardGameGumbo, or the youtube.com/BoardGameGumbo. It helps us get the word out about all of our upcoming shows, including in 2 weeks, we're going to have the Brandt, my good buddy Brandt Sanderson of the Right Brain Rollers podcast. He does it with Eric Summer from the Dice Tower Awards and, of course, Dice Tower podcast. You could check out Brandt's brand new podcast, Right Brain Rollers podcast, or come by in 2 weeks and see us. You can catch us on Twitch next week on twitch.tv/BoardGameGumbo. Every other Tuesday night, we play your games live on Twitch. I am BJ from Board Game Gumbo, for Verla and for Steve. And thanks to Tory and thanks to Kevin and for Adam. Laissez les bon temps rouler.
Good night, everyone.